don't forget to like and subscribe.
All right, so are you ready to dive into something pretty wild? I mean, we're talking about Elon Musk making a prediction about Justin Trudeau's future as the Prime Minister of Canada.
It's definitely attention-grabbing.
Yeah, and the timing is interesting, too, because it comes right in the middle of this whole India-Canada diplomatic drama that's going on.
Yeah.
So we're going to try to make sense of all of this today using some interesting articles that we found from places like The Times of India, India Today, and India TV.
Yeah, the timing of this prediction is what's really got me thinking, right in the middle of all this tension between India and Canada. It's like, Is there something more to this? Is there a connection?
Well, let's start by going back to what Musk actually said, because it all started with a post, on X.
Right, the platform formerly known as Twitter.
Yeah, exactly. And someone asked Musk for help in, quote, getting rid of Trudeau.
I saw that.
And Musk just replies, super simply, he will be gone in the upcoming election.
Wow. Just like that.
Yeah, it's pretty bold, right?
Yeah, and it's not the first time he's done something like this. Remember when he called Olaf Scholz, the German chancellor, a fool?
Yeah.
And predicted that the whole socialist government there was going to collapse?
Yeah.
It seems like maybe Musk likes to make these kind of political predictions.
Yeah, he's definitely not shying away from global politics. It's interesting. So getting back to Trudeau, though, you were saying before that the timing of this prediction is interesting because things aren't exactly looking great for Trudeau politically right now. Can you kind of elaborate on what you meant by that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So right now, Trudeau is leading a minority government in Canada.
Right. Which
basically means he doesn't have a majority of the seats in Parliament.
Right.
And he's got some serious competition, from Pierre Poilievre and the Conservative Party and Jagmeet Singh and the New Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So things are already kind of shaky for him politically, and then Musk comes out with this prediction. It adds another layer of complexity to the whole situation.
Yeah. So even without Musk's prediction, Trudeau's position is not exactly secure.
Not at all.
And then on top of that, you have this whole India-Canada conflict that's unfolding. So could that be playing a role in Musk's prediction, do you think?
It's definitely a piece of the puzzle we need to look at,
Yeah, for sure.
To understand what might be going on here, we need to kind of unpack what's at the heart of this diplomatic standoff between these two countries.
Yeah, because things have escalated pretty quickly.
They have.
Can you give us a quick rundown of what the main issues are?
Okay, well, basically, India is really concerned about extremist and anti-India activities that are happening within Canada.
Okay.
They're particularly worried about groups that support Khalistani extremism, which is this separatist movement that wants to create an independent Sikh state called Khalistan.
Okay.
And this movement, it's got ties to violence and terrorism in the past, so it's a major point of tension.
So that's India's perspective. Now, what about Canada? How are they seeing all of this?
Yeah. Well, Canada has actually accused the Indian government of being involved in the death of a prominent Khalistani activist, Hardeep Singh Nijjar, who was killed in Canada.
Oh, wow.
And this is obviously strained relations between the two countries.
Yeah, that sounds like a really serious accusation.
It is.
So where do things stand right now?
Well, the situation has gotten much worse. In response to Canada's accusations, India has withdrawn its high commissioner from Canada.
Wow.
And Prime Minister Modi, he's publicly condemned attacks on a Hindu temple in Canada.
Right.
And attempts to intimidate Indian diplomats. So, yeah, the diplomatic channels are pretty much frozen at this point.
So it sounds like we've got a lot to unpack here.
Yeah.
We have, Musk making this prediction.
Yeah.
Trudeau is politically vulnerable already.
Yeah.
And now we have this rapidly deteriorating relationship between India and Canada.
Right.
That's a lot.
Man.
So where do we even begin to make sense of all this?
I think to untangle all of this, we need to look at a few things. First of all, we got to remember that Elon Musk has criticized the Canadian government before, specifically about their stance on free speech and internet regulation.
Yeah, I remember reading about Musk's issues with the Canadian government when they rolled out those new regulations for online streaming services.
Right.
He wasn't very happy about that.
No, he wasn't. He's always been very vocal about wanting a less regulated internet.
Yeah.
He argues that too much government intervention just stifles free speech and innovation.
Right.
So maybe he sees Trudeau's policies as being too restrictive, and he believes that if Canada had a different leader, things would be different. They'd take a more hands-off approach when it comes to the internet.
That's a really interesting point. So So you're saying it's possible that Musk is essentially saying, I don't like how things are going in Canada, and therefore I predict a change is coming.
Yeah, it's possible.
But is there a more direct connection between his prediction and this conflict between India and Canada?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's nothing in the articles that we've seen that directly links the two.
Right.
But there's another piece of this puzzle that we haven't really talked about yet, and that's Donald Trump's return to the White House.
Oh, yeah. The Trump factor.
Right. We can't forget about that.
I almost did. How does he fit into all of this?
Well, remember, Canada's economy is super tied to the U.S.
Yeah.
75% of Canada's exports go to the U.S.
Right.
And remember when Trump was president before, he wanted to put a 10% tariff on all imports,
Right.
which would have been a huge blow to Canada.
Right.
And then there's the personal tension between Trump and Trudeau.
Oh, yeah.
Trump even wrote about Trudeau's family in his book.
Oh, really?
Yeah, making some pretty controversial claims about his mother.
Oh, wow. Okay. So there's no love lost between them, that's for sure.
Yeah.
But how does this all connect back to Musk's prediction about Trudeau?
To understand that, I think we have to look at the bigger picture. You know, Musk and Trump have a lot of the same views when it comes to things like politics and the economy.
Yep.
They both want less government intervention,
Right.
especially when it comes to free enterprise and fossil fuel production,
Right.
which makes sense considering their business interests.
Yeah.
And this is very different from Trudeau's more liberal approach.
Okay, so you're saying that it's possible that Musk's prediction is influenced by this desire to see a Canadian leader who is more in line with his and Trump's worldview.
It's definitely a possibility.
Someone who's more likely to support their business interests and less likely to put regulations in place that they don't agree with.
Exactly. And it's definitely something worth thinking about. You know, we're not just talking about a random prediction here. We're talking about Elon Musk, one of the most influential figures in the world.
Right.
His opinions can actually move markets, shape public discussion, and potentially even affect political outcomes.
All right, this is getting really interesting. We've got Musk's prediction, a vulnerable Trudeau, a diplomatic crisis with India, and now Trump's back in the picture. This is a lot to unpack.
It is.
And I can't wait to dig deeper into all of this and explore the potential connections and implications. But for now, let's take a quick break. We'll be right back with more on this fascinating deep dive into Elon Musk's prediction and what it all could mean for the world.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
It's like a tangled web we're trying to unravel here.
Yeah, yes.
But I think the important thing to remember is that, you know, even just a tweet from someone like Elon Musk, it can have a real impact on global politics. You know what I mean? We're not just talking about some random social media post.
Right.
This is a statement that could have some serious real-world consequences.
Yeah, for sure. So let's go back to that connection between Musk's prediction and the India-Canada conflict for a second. You said before that there isn't really a direct link in the articles, but there could be some indirect ones.
Right.
So what do you think those might be?
Well, you know, both Musk and Trump have said that they prefer leaders who are more aligned with their free market ideas, you know?
Okay.
They want less government intervention, especially when it comes to trade and business.
Yeah.
So how do you think that applies to what's happening between India and Canada right now?
That's interesting. So are you saying that maybe Musk's prediction about Trudeau has something to do with wanting a Canadian leader who would handle this whole conflict with India differently?
It's definitely a possibility to think about, you know? Like, imagine if Canada elected a leader who was more on the same page as Musk and Trump.
Right.
Maybe that leader would be more likely to focus on those economic ties with India and try to find a way to resolve this diplomatic situation.
Okay, so let's break that down. We know that Canada's economy is really dependent on trade with the U.S.
Yeah.
But what about their relationship with India economically?
It's growing, you know?
Okay.
It's not as big as their trade with the U.S., but India is a rising global power. Their economy is expanding really quickly. So a Canadian leader who's focused on economic growth and global trade, they might see that relationship with India as really important to Canada's future.
Okay, so in that scenario, a leader who's more aligned with Musk and Trump's views might be more willing to kind of smooth things over with India, even if it means maybe downplaying some of the issues that have caused this tension.
That's one possible outcome. Of course, we're just speculating here. We don't really know what's going on in Elon Musk's head.
Right.
But But if we look at the bigger picture, his past criticism of Trudeau, his ideological similarities with Trump,
Yeah.
and the potential economic impact, it gives us some clues about what might be behind his statement.
Yeah, this is really interesting. It's like we're peeling back the layers of an onion here,
It is.
We're uncovering all these hidden connections and motivations.
Yeah.
It's a good reminder that even something as simple as a tweet can be like a window into this whole world of power dynamics and political maneuvering.
Exactly. And it also shows how important critical thinking and media literacy are these days. We're constantly getting hit with information and opinions and predictions.
Yeah.
It's up to us to figure out what's real, what's not, what the motivations are behind it all, and then come to our own conclusions.
For sure. So going back to those articles, I noticed that a lot of them mention Musk criticizing Canada's approach to free speech and internet regulation. Can we talk about that a bit more? How does that connect to his prediction about Trudeau? And what does it tell us about Musk's overall worldview?
Yeah, Musk has always been very vocal about wanting a more hands-off approach to regulating the internet.
Right.
He says that too much government involvement stifles innovation and limits free speech.
Yeah.
He's gone head-to-head with governments all over the world, including Canada, over policies that he thinks are stepping over the line.
Yeah, like he wasn't happy about those new regulations for online streaming services in Canada, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Those regulations, they force streaming platforms to register with the government.
Right.
And follow all these Canadian content rules.
Right.
Musk saw that as the government overreaching, He said it would kill competition and limit what consumers can choose.
Right.
So this shows us that Musk has these libertarian leanings,
Okay.
He believes in the power of free markets.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does that tie back to his prediction about Trudeau?
Well, maybe Musk thinks that Trudeau's policies, especially the ones about internet regulation,
Right.
are too interventionist,
Okay.
Too much government involvement. Maybe he thinks that if Canada had a different leader, it would create a better environment for his businesses and for his vision of what technology should be.
So it's not just about not liking Trudeau personally.
Right.
It's about a fundamental difference in how they see the world.
Exactly.
And Musk believing that a different leader would create a political and economic situation that benefits him more.
You got it.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
And it makes you think about the influence that these tech billionaires like Musk have.
Yeah.
Are we in a time where their money and power in the tech world gives them a lot of political power too?
That's a good question.
Yeah. And if so, what does that mean for democracy and how power is balanced?
It's definitely something to think about. It's a really complicated issue with no easy answers,
Right.
but we need to be aware of it and think about it critically,
Yeah.
We need to figure out how to make sure that democracy stays strong and those in power are held accountable even with all this concentration of wealth and technology in the hands of just a few people.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so we've talked about Musk's prediction, his criticisms of Trudeau, the conflict between India and Canada, and Trump's influence. But what about the Canadian people? What are they thinking about all of this? Is there any sign that Musk's prediction might actually come true?
Well, like I said before, Trudeau's in charge of a minority government,
Yeah.
which means his power isn't very strong.
Right.
And the polls show that his approval ratings have been going down. Yeah, and he's facing a lot of opposition from both the Conservatives and the New Democrats.
So he could lose the next election, even without Musk saying anything.
Definitely, Canadian politics are always changing. It's hard to predict what's going to happen.
Right.
So while Musk's prediction might sound crazy to some people, it's not impossible.
Right.
And even if Trudeau doesn't lose the election, Musk's comments could make people trust him even less.
Yeah.
And give his opponents more ammunition to use against him.
It's like a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Right.
The more people hear that Trudeau's going to lose, the more they might start to believe it and vote accordingly.
Exactly. And that's the power of suggestion, especially when it comes from someone like Elon Musk, who has so many followers.
Right.
It can really change public opinion and even affect election results.
This is all so fascinating. We've uncovered so much in this story.
We have.
But I feel like we're still just scratching the surface.
Yeah.
Is there anything else in the articles that you found really interesting or important?
One thing that stood out to me was that Musk made his prediction in response to a user who was asking for help in getting rid of Trudeau.
Yeah, that was kind of strange.
Yeah.
It's not every day that people ask a tech billionaire to help them with their political problems.
Right. And it shows how much influence these guys have. They're
Yeah.
not just business leaders or innovators anymore.
Yeah.
They're becoming cultural icons, thought leaders, even political influencers.
So in a way, Musk's prediction is like a form of political activism.
It's possible. Whether he meant it that way or not, his words can get his followers moving,
Right.
shape the conversation, and maybe even affect the outcome of political events.
It's something to be aware of, for sure. So we've talked about a lot today.
We have.
But I think the main takeaway for me is that we need to be more aware of how power works in the world.
Right.
We can't just take things at face value.
Right.
Especially when they come from people like Elon Musk.
Right.
We got to think critically, analyze what they're saying, consider their motivations, and understand the bigger picture.
I completely agree. Those critical thinking skills are so important in today's world. We have to be careful about what information we take in, be able to spot biases, separate facts from opinions, and make our own decisions.
Well said. So now I bet our listener is eager to hear your final thoughts on all of this and what it all means for them.
I'm happy to share.
So let's wrap up this deep dive and bring it to a close. But first, we're going to take a quick break and hear from our sponsors.
Don't forget to like and subscribe.
All right, we're back and ready to finish up our deep dive into Elon Musk's prediction about Justin Trudeau. It's been a wild ride uncovering all these connections and potential motives, so let's bring it all home now. What does this all mean for our listener, someone who might be just hearing about all of this for the first time?
I think the big takeaway here is that we're in a time where the lines between technology politics and global power, they're all getting blurry. Elon Musk isn't just a tech CEO. He's a global influencer. His opinions can move market start debates,
right, and
maybe even influence what happens in politics.
Yeah, so this isn't just about some famous person making a random guess.
Right.
Musk's words have power, and understanding why he said what he said is really important for understanding the bigger picture.
Exactly. We need to be more aware of how people like Musk, with all their resources and their huge platforms, can shape the narrative and influence events all over the world. It's a call to be more critical of the information we take and to question motives and think about the potential consequences of these statements.
You've mentioned this idea of critical thinking a few times now. Can you break that down for our listener? Like, what does that mean in a practical sense?
Sure. It's about going deeper than just the headlines and the sound bites. When you hear something like Musk's prediction about Trudeau, don't just take it at face value. Ask yourself, who's saying this? What are their motivations? What's the context? What are the potential consequences, both intended and unintended?
So it's about being an active participant in the flow of information, not just passively taking it all in.
Exactly.
We have to engage critically with what we hear and read, especially when it's coming from powerful people.
Absolutely. In a world where information is everywhere, the ability to think critically about that information is more important than ever. It's the key to making informed decisions, forming your own opinions, and navigating this complex world we live in.
Okay, so let's apply that critical thinking to Musk's prediction. We've talked about the potential connections to his dislike of Trudeau's policies, his agreement with Trump's worldview, and even the India-Canada conflict. Is there anything else we should consider?
Well, one thing that really stood out to me was the timing of it all. Musk decided to talk about Canadian politics right when this diplomatic crisis between India and Canada was getting worse.
Right.
It makes you wonder if he's trying to send a message, maybe show his support for a different way of handling this whole conflict.
So it's like he's using his platform to influence the situation even though he's not directly involved.
Exactly. And that's a powerful tool. By just saying what he thinks, he can insert himself into the conversation, change people's perceptions, and maybe even influence the actions of the people who are actually involved.
This has been a really eye-opening deep dive. We started with a simple tweet and ended up uncovering this complex web of political maneuvering, economic interests, and ideological battles. It's a reminder that even things that seem small can have huge consequences, and that the words of powerful people can have a big impact.
It's a reminder that we're all connected and that what those empowered do can affect the whole world. It shows how important it is to stay informed, to think critically about information, and understand the forces that shape our world.
Well said. So as we wrap up, I want to leave our listener with one final thought-provoking question. We've been talking about Elon Musk's prediction about Justin Trudeau, but what if this is just the beginning? Are we entering a time where these tech billionaires with all their wealth and influence become major players on the world political stage? And if so, what does that mean for democracy and how the world is governed?
That's the question we all need to think about. The rise of these tech giants and all this wealth and power ending up in the hands of a few people is a defining characteristic of our time. Understanding what this means, both good and bad, is crucial for creating a future where technology helps democracy instead of hurting it.
Definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into Elon Musk's prediction and what it all might mean. We encourage you to keep exploring these ideas, stay curious, and stay engaged. The future is being shaped right now, and it's up to all of us to be a part of it.
So thanks for listening our podcast. Do like and subscribe our channel. Do comment if you have anything to share with us on this topic. We will appreciate your contribution.